All right, hey guys, this is Luke with PowerAthlete. Reporting here from PowerAthlete HQ out in Costa Mesa. I want to take you through a little demo today of our back squat. And any of you who have followed any sort of PowerAthlete programming knows that we are geared towards empowering performance. We don't want you to be the best athlete in the weight room. We want you to take all those gains and all that hard work that you put in the weight room and use that on the field, because no one cares how much you're back squatting. They only care about whether you are winning or you are losing. Okay, so the biggest things we have to take into account here are going to be some skill transfer. We need to make sure that our setup and execution resembles that of the athleticism you are going to display on the field. And we got to make sure that we are executing correctly in a nice, safe anatomic position. So we're going to take you through a little demo today on the cornerstone movement in the PowerAthlete programs, which is our back squat. What I'm going to be taking you guys through now is setting up and executing the back squat with Amanda. Amanda is one of our football players. She plays in the Legends Football League, and she's been training with us for a couple years now. And what I really want to focus on here is setup. And this is our pre-setup before we're even racking the bar. You need to have your athletes dialed in. And we're going to go from the ground up on this, and it's going to start with foot position. So Amanda, go ahead and let's just kind of get our feet set up near that bar. It's going to be feet are going to be outside shoulder width. And what we're going to look for here is the Q angle out of the hip. We're watching for that knee, the center of that knee, to be dropping on the inside of the ankle. We don't want a narrow stance, so bring those feet in. That's going to be too narrow for us because you can see the knee is over the mid of the base of support. We don't want to be super wide like a power lifter, so get nice and wide, Amanda, with the stance. This is going to be a little too wide. And ultimately what we're trying to replicate here is what we refer to as our universal athletic position, which is going to be that natural position that athletes will get into on the field, on the court, on the rink, when they have a moment to make or break a play. And that's what we're doing here with our back squat, is we are strengthening posture and position so that we can use that strength in an athletic scenario on the field. So Amanda, let's go ahead and get back in that good stance. Now, what we're also noticing here is toe position, and this is absolutely essential, is to start getting your athletes to understand proper foot position on this squat. And we need to squat toes forward. This is going to be the most advantageous position for sprinting and for non-linear movement. So any sort of lateral speed and agility, lateral change of direction, the most efficient and safest way to maximize your ability to change direction is with a toes forward position. So this is absolutely essential in all of our movements within our training, is to maintain that proper foot position. All right, so now that Amanda's got her good foot position set up, we're going to establish a grip on the bar. Amanda's going to go about thumbs width off the transition from the smooth to the knurling. So go ahead, Amanda. And she's going to wrap that thumb around the bar. We've seen some people recommend thumbs over and pulling down on this bar, but what we found with our athletes is not only does pulling down on the bar on your back give you more of a psychological realization that the bar may feel heavy, because that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be squatting heavy, but it also gives us a harder position to actually tighten up the end of the kinetic chain. So as you grip that end of the kinetic chain where your hand is grabbing the bar, we'll actually be able to maximize tension in that upper back, which is going to help us squat a heavier load. All right, so now that Amanda's got her grip set up, we're going to establish what we're going to call the rack position. I'm just going to move your ponytail here, Amanda. So she's going to step under this bar and establish a rack position on her back that is on her traps. The traps are that meaty part on the upper back, and we want that to be right in the meat of the traps here. This is going to be the most advantageous position to hold this bar and replicate, again, that athletic position. Because what people tend to do is they may go too high. So Amanda, let that bar come up another inch or so higher, because a higher rack with the barbell will allow you to get a more upright torso and replicate maybe the Olympic lifts or the position you would receive a clean or a snatch. Well, I don't care about that, because I'm not training Olympic lifters here. I'm training field sport athletes. Now, a lower bar position or low bar back squat, even lower, Amanda, we've seen athletes squat with this position here because it allows them to sit back further in this squat and squat more weight. And that's one of the biggest fallacies that a lot of our strength and conditioning coaches get mixed up on is, hey, I need my athlete to squat more weight because more weight means better performance. Weight is really just a directional indicator of progress in your strength training program. It's not the end all be all, because nobody, like I said, nobody cares what you back squat on the field if you miss a play, if you fumble the football, or if you botch a serve. They just care, are you doing your job and are you winning? Okay? So we want to get that base of the traps, nice, we'll call it just good athletic rack position. So right at that base of the traps, Amanda. Now, another reason that we're going to work on this grip position here is because one of the biggest breaking points on a back squat is going to be the upper back. Typically, athletes can leg press much more than they can back squat. And the difference is you're actually supporting the load through the thorax and the spine, and you're using your hip girdle and your trunk to support this whole load on your back. And that's great because it's a great way to maximize recruitment and get your athletes to be strong systemically. But the implication here is if we have a wider grip on this bar, so just kind of float those hands out, Amanda, you can see this back start to open up, and you don't get that thoracic support from this musculature and this scapular system in here. But as Amanda brings her hands in, you can see that tighten up, and you can see the muscles really pop on that upper back. And that's what we're trying to do, is maximize that tension in the upper back so that we can support more weight through this back squat. Now, one thing I want you to notice about Amanda's position is she is essentially in a squat position right now. If we were to magically fling out these supports, she could bear the weight. I don't want your athletes to get in the habit of standing in a staggered stance, Amanda, or lunge. So Amanda, let's get those feet in together, like you're gonna lunge the weight out of the rack like we were talking about. So bring this foot back. I've seen people kind of get under that bar, stand it up, step back, and then have to reestablish a good wide base or narrower base based off of how they walk that weight out. You want your athletes to be ready to squat under the bar. Okay? So that is our set up position. What I want Amanda to do now, she's been nice and lax, nice and ready to rock, or I'm sorry, nice and relaxed. She hasn't been working too hard. But before we stand this weight up, I want Amanda to brace. And we're going to brace the whole trunk and pelvic position because we want to keep a nice neutral spine. So to show you what that neutral position should look like, we're going to demonstrate what we call our dead bug. So Amanda, let's go ahead and pop over here. Amanda's going to lay on her back. Legs are out. Nice, tall, pretty posture here. And we're going to start from the head down to the feet. So Amanda, I want you to tuck your chin and press the small or back of your neck into the ground. And we're really elongating that cervical spine right now. Then I'm going to have Amanda pop her arms up into what we'll call Frankenstein arms. Okay, so that's just arms out. The shoulders are now retracted and depressed. From here, Amanda's now going to drop her rib cage and belly button into the ground, painting that low back on the ground. And then we're going to lock the quads, pull the ankles back, and get these feet up in a nice 90-degree position. So really lock those legs out, Amanda. There we are. So what we're doing here is we're establishing a neutral trunk position. And this is approximately a 90-degree hip flexion position. This is essentially a squat, but unloaded with a nice neutral spine. So this torso position right here is what Amanda's going to be fighting for while she squats this weight below parallel. Now, for some athletes, this is going to be a challenge based off hamstring flexibility, trunk stability, and trunk strength. But this is a great drill to start teaching your athletes a performance perspective cue on a back squat. Because ultimately, if they're overextending and they have this arching back or a rounding turtle back, you can all bring it back to a good dead bug position. Thanks, Amanda. Go ahead and roll on up. Now let's get on over to the bar. So we'll go ahead and get set up, Amanda. So thumbs just outside the smooth, thumbs around the bar. We're going to step under, good wide athletic base, ready to squat. Rack that bar on our back. Good, and then let's go ahead and stand it up. We're bracing, stepping it out. 1 step, 2 steps. Now what Amanda's doing is dropping her rib cage, spreading the world apart, and she's just going to go ahead and give us 3 squats. Good, Amanda. And go ahead and rack that sucker up. Now what we saw there was Amanda sitting her hips down and back. And that's a big fault that we tend to see out of some athlete squat is they'll just sit that weight right down. And what you'll be able to see is that on those knees is if I'm squatting down and into the balls of my feet, my knees are going to shoot out in front of my toes. And that can be problematic because then we'll become anteriorly dominant. And the problem with that is we need to utilize the posterior to be powerful and fast, and we utilize that posterior to stabilize the knee in any sort of force reduction scenarios. Now I want you to watch how Amanda sits back into these squats, and her hips are way back behind her heels. And you can see her knees also track backwards as she stands up. They shoot forwards on the way down and track backwards on the way up. Good, good, good. And that patterning is telling me that Amanda is sitting back into the posterior chain, her hamstrings, her glutes, and she's utilizing both her quads, her anterior, her quadriceps, and her hip flexors, extenders, to do this movement pattern. And that is absolutely essential. Whatever your programming is, we want you to focus on the safest, most mechanically sound way to load your athlete through their spine. Okay? Another fault that we tend to see is just kind of a slow and careful type of squat. So Amanda, go ahead and let's just give me two of your standard squats, and on that last one, go a little slower. Now we can see as Amanda gets towards the top of that squat, she's accelerating the bar. We can see the bar whipping. But on this last squat, we can see it's just kind of grindy and slow. And out of that bottom, we had a elongated or a longer amortization phase. That amortization phase is the period in which it takes the eccentric load or the athlete to change that eccentric or negative loading into the concentric or standing portion of our back squat. And think of it like hitting a hammer on a mattress versus hitting a hammer on an anvil. You will not want to see that hammer hit the mattress, the shock and force bleed out, and it slowly turn around and rebound. You want to imagine a hammer hitting an anvil where it's ping, those hips hit that bottom hip crease at parallel depth, and then our athlete stands up as fast and as hard as they can, all while maintaining a proper posture and position. You never want the athlete to compromise any sort of posture and position to try and force out another rep or squeeze out 5 or 10 more pounds through this range of motion. So just a couple things to review. We want our athletes set up and ready to squat before they even rack the weight. Then as they walk this weight out, it's about posture and position. 1 step, 2 step, knees on the instep, feet are just outside shoulder width apart. And then we are going to squat hip crease to parallel and stand that bar up as fast as we can. And the ultimate reason is, if you train fast, you will be fast. If you train slow, you will be slow. So we need to keep our athletes fast, strong, and powerful. And one of the best tools you have in your arsenal as a strength coach or a head coach is our barbell back squat.